audibly gasping while I was reading the book. Honestly, just... And then you think you trust someone and then you find out you're wrong and you should not have trusted them. I was pretty scared reading this on my own at night. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For today's video I have decided to do a little thriller recommendation video because obviously I have been very much enjoying my thrillers recently and a lot of people have been really enjoying hearing about them. So I thought I'd go over some of my favourite thrillers that I have read over the past year or so. I did put a little poll up on YouTube asking what people most wanted to see soon and this is what came out on top. So that's what we're doing. So I'm just going to go over, I think, about 5 of my favourite thrillers that I've read over the past year and talk about them, what I liked about them, and hopefully you can get some good thriller recommendations. So if you'd like to hear about some of my favourite thrillers, then just keep watching. So the first one I'm going to talk about should come as absolutely no surprise because it is probably my favourite thriller of all time. It is one that I talk about all the time. I constantly recommend it when anyone asks about good thrillers. So yeah, it should be a surprise. But that is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This one is described as a romantic thriller and it is very different from anything that Colleen Hoover has written before. Usually I think she's more of a romance writer, but this one is a romantic thriller and it's so good. So this one basically follows the character of Lowen, who is a failing writer, and she then gets the chance to complete the remaining books in a very successful series written by Verity Crawford. Basically Verity goes for an accident and she is left completely paralysed and unable to speak or anything. Her husband really wants the series to be finished, so he then hires Lowen to finish off the series. And basically what she does is she moves into Verity's home where Verity is upstairs in her bed being cared for 24/7. She moves into the home, lives in the spare room with the intention of going through Verity's office and finding ideas for what was supposed to happen in the rest of the books. But when she is there she finds a autobiography that Verity was writing that completely puts everything about Verity and her life and her family into question, including what really happened the day that her daughter died. And as Lowen continues to read this autobiography, she finds out more and more dark things about her, while also starting to form quite a romantic relationship with the husband, Jeremy, despite the fact that Verity is in the house. And then some weird things start to happen and Lowen starts to question whether Verity is actually in this state that she seems to be in. And yeah, that's basically the premise of the book. It is so good. The twists in this book, unlike anything else, like I always say my favourite thing about thrillers is the twists, and I like when a book ends with like a big bang ending, and the twists in this one, honestly, I did not see coming. I was blown away, audibly gasping while I was reading the book, and the ending is... honestly, the ending is so good. Like, you need to read it just for the ending. I definitely think this is my favourite thriller of all time. I've still to read something that will beat it, and I just want Colleen Hoover to write some more thrillers. So the next book that actually comes a very close second to Verity, I absolutely loved it. I sped through it in like 2 nights I think, and that is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This one I picked up on Kindle Unlimited just because I was in the mood for a thriller. I wasn't expecting much from it. I just fancied a thriller and that was like the first one that popped up, so I thought I'd give it a try, and oh my god, it blew me away. Like, the tension in this book is like nothing else I've read. Like, I was honestly completely on the edge of my seat, like not breathing while trying to get to the end of specific scenes, and honestly just... So this one is like an isolation thriller, I believe they're described as, and it follows Darby, and she stops at a rest station off of a motorway when there is a massive blizzard and is therefore stuck there along with 3 or 4 other characters, I believe. And when she is there, she is coming out of her car and she looks into the van next to her and sees that there is a little girl in a cage inside the van, and therefore one of the other characters inside this service station must be like the abductor. So it's basically all about her first of all trying to work out who it is that has abducted this little girl, and then obviously trying to get the little girl to safety while also trying not to be suspicious in any way and be found out by the abductor. And again, the twists in this book, you have absolutely no idea who you can trust the whole way through, and then you think you trust someone and then you find out you're wrong and you should not have trusted them. Honestly, it just messed with my head so much. It was the whole... I think I need to read more isolation thrillers because I think that whole setting and that vibe was what put me completely on edge, because obviously they're in the middle of nowhere and there's only like 4 characters or something, which sounds like it could be boring, but it's not. It all takes place in this one night in this one service station with only like 4 or 5 characters, but it is one of like the most well developed thrillers I have read. It does not stop. It is constant, like with the twists and the turns and the tension and the action. It is just honestly so good. I would highly recommend it. The only thing I would say about that one is trigger warnings for like violence, quite graphic violence at points, so if that is not your thing, maybe stay away from that one. The next book I have is actually one that I read very recently, so you'll probably have already seen my thoughts if you read a recent vlog, but that is Final Girls by Riley Sager. I buddy read this one with Kat, Kay and Tabitha. We had such a good time buddy reading this, and it's actually led to us wanting to read thrillers monthly continuing on, and Jodie is also going to join us as well, which is really exciting. But this one, honestly, so good. Like, I did have very high hopes for this one. This is one that I went into with very high expectations, and for the first sort of half or so I think I was really enjoying it, but I was worried that it wasn't gonna live up to those expectations. And then you hit like page 200 or something and all hell breaks loose. Like, the tension, the creepy vibes. Again, you don't know who you can trust. Basically, this one follows the character of Quincy, who is one of 3 final girls. Basically there's her, Sam and Lisa, and they have all survived like their own massacres over the years where they have been the only survivor and therefore the final girl, and they've been dubbed the final girls by the media, and they therefore have this sort of connection because they're the only people who understand each other and understand what it's like to go through a massacre like that and be the sole survivor. But then Lisa is found dead in very mysterious and suspicious circumstances, which leads to a whole turn of events and a lot of tension. And again, you don't know who you can trust. You're constantly trying to decide who the killer is. There are many suspicious characters in this book. Every single character in this book is flawed and morally grey, some of them more than others, which is something I find really interesting. And one of my favourite things about this book is that it does have an unreliable narrator. So we have Quincy, who supposedly does not remember anything about the night of her massacre. She remembers arriving at the log cabin with her friends, and then she fast forwards and remembers running into the hands of a cop afterwards with blood all over her, and apparently remembers nothing of what went on in between those events. So while we are going through the present day, we're also getting flashbacks to her massacre and slowly piecing together what happened that night. So you do have an unreliable narrator because Quincy has these blackouts and therefore cannot really tell us what happened that night or who to trust. So yeah, this one, the twists were everything. There's a common theme here. Obviously my favourite thrillers all have twists in them, but the ones in this one, so good. There are more than one, just gonna put that out there, and every single one of them made me gasp and I did not see coming. I thought I had this one down. I thought I had a very good theory and I knew what had happened, but I was wrong. And I would be very impressed if anyone actually knew what happened, because yeah, so well written. Definitely need to read more Riley Sager in future because the writing was just so complex, so clever. Loved every second of it. The next one I have as one of my favourite thrillers is actually a YA thriller, so it'd definitely be good for people who are sort of new to the thriller genre maybe, or who are looking for something a little bit more tame, but that is A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. Despite this being a YA thriller, it is definitely one of my favourite thrillers of all time. I knew that I was going to love this. I knew that it was going to be a quick read and that I was going to enjoy the storyline, but I didn't expect as much from it as I would from an adult thriller, if that makes sense. And I don't really know why. I just think because it was going to be more tame, I thought, and maybe like a little bit less complex, I thought I wouldn't enjoy it as much, but I could not have been more wrong because this one was very complex, very clever, and had me guessing right up until the end. This book follows the character of Pippa, who is doing a school project in which she decides to investigate a murder that happened a number of years ago in her town, where a girl named Andy was supposedly murdered by her boyfriend Sal Singh. However, Pippa does not believe that Sal was actually the murderer, and because he actually sadly committed suicide afterwards, again in very suspicious circumstances, and therefore was never able to sort of plead his case, Pippa decides to do it for him and investigates to try and prove his innocence. And it is so interesting the way that she investigates and the way that she turns over stones and finds out things that happened, and the danger that she's put in as a young girl in doing this, because obviously the real killer does not want it to get out. I had no idea what was going on in this one. I did not guess what happened at all. Again, I had theories and I was very excited about those theories, but I was completely wrong, which is what I love. I love when a thriller has you guessing the whole way through and you really have no idea what's going on. I think that is just the mark of a really good writer. So yeah, absolutely love this one, would highly recommend, and would highly recommend the sequel as well, which I read in the same day or the same weekend for a 24-hour readathon I did with Tabitha, where we read thrillers for 24 hours. I read this one and I read the sequel, Good Girl Bad Blood, and absolutely loved them both, and I'm hugely excited for the third one, which comes out later this year. The final book that I'm going to talk about in this video is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. Again, I read this one in a vlog. I think it was my book-up-a-thon vlog, and I absolutely love this one. It is sort of like a Turn of the Screw adaptation, if you have heard of that, read that, or watched any of the many adaptations there have been, but this is a very modern take on it. So this one again does include an unreliable narrator. It starts off with the character of Rowan, who is writing to a lawyer from prison to try and get him to take on her case to prove her innocence, because she is currently in prison for the murder of a child. She is pleading her innocence, trying to get this lawyer to take on her case, and therefore writing these letters from prison explaining what really happened that night. So we're going back and forth between her letters and what she's saying, and also to like flashbacks to what really happened when she went to this house as a nanny. She is basically hired by this family up in Scotland. She moves into the house and is left with the children as a nanny because the mum and dad are working away. She moves into a smart house where everything is done by panels, like locks, music, shower, lights. Everything is done by these panels, and therefore you've got the aspect of technology and technology possibly malfunctioning. But strange things start to happen while she's living there. She hears footsteps like above her room, things move, music turns on unexpectedly, all sorts of weird things, and she seems to slowly start to lose her mind, which is very like Turn of the Screw, because the whole question in that one is whether what happened was paranormal or if the nanny was actually suffering from mental illness. And it's very similar in this one, because everything that happens causes her to lose a lot of sleep, and through lack of sleep she starts to slowly seem to lose her mind. But this one, my favourite thing about this was just the absolutely creepy vibes, like the footsteps and the weird things happening. Honestly, it totally got under my skin. Like trying to read this at night time with those scenes with like the footsteps going up and down beside her door, I was creeped out. Like, I love a horror movie, and it's not usually a book that can make me feel that way. Like, films can get me really scared, but books, usually I'm like, it's fine, I'm just reading words on a page. This one, the atmosphere totally got me. I was pretty scared reading this on my own at night, but in the best way. Again, like I said before, unreliable narrator is one of my absolute favourite tropes, so I love that aspect of this. And again, there are many amazing twists that I did not see coming. The ending of this one is what made it for me. Like, I loved the whole vibe the whole way through, but the ending, Ruth Ware is a genius. Like, it was just so good. So yeah, would highly recommend this one. I think a lot of people would highly recommend this one. I actually had it recommended to me by a lot of people before I read it as their favourite thriller, so yeah, would highly recommend. So those are 5 of my favourite thriller books. I hope that you got some nice recommendations from this. I will of course do more thriller book recommendations in the future once I have read a few more. Those are my favourites for the moment. Let me know if you have read any of these books. Let me know if you're adding any of them to your TBR. As always, if you did enjoy this video, then do please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe for more bookish content from me. Comment down below with any of your thoughts and feelings. I do reply to every single comment, and I will see you in my next one.